I just needed to hear you say it. But your silence is enough. It's over.
The evening Marcus came home late smelling of someone else's perfume, Anuri Ose had already made his plate. That was the kind of woman she was. The kind who still cooked at 9 o'clock on a Thursday because she believed marriage was work, and she had never been afraid of working. She had folded the napkin beside his fork with the same careful hands that had once folded her mother's funeral program, the same hands that typed briefs for 60 hours a week at Harrington and Cole Law, on the same hands she now pressed flat against the kitchen counter when she heard the front door open and close too quietly. Too quietly. That was the first sign. Marcus was not a quiet man. She heard him pour a drink before he came into the kitchen. She heard the ice clink twice. She heard him breathe, long and slow and guilty, before she even turned around. "We need to talk," he said. Anuri turned. Marcus Lawson was still a handsome man at 42. Broad shoulders. Warm brown eyes that used to make her feel seen. He was wearing the gray suit she had taken to the dry cleaner 2 weeks ago, and he was holding his glass like it was the only honest thing in the room. She studied his face and already knew. You know the way sometimes your body receives news before your brain does? The way your stomach drops 1 full second before the words arrive? That was what happened to Anuri Ose in her own kitchen on an ordinary Thursday. Her stomach fell first, and then came the words. "I've been seeing someone," Marcus said. It's serious, Nuri. I didn't plan for it to be, but it is. And I think I need to be honest with you before this goes any further." The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed. "How old is she?" Anuri asked. Her voice was very calm. She was proud of it later. That steadiness. It was the only thing she managed to keep intact that night. Marcus looked at the floor. "Does that matter?" "How old?" "DeMarcus." A pause. 22. He had been lying. She would find out later. Imani was 20, a 20-year-old intern at the architecture firm where Marcus had worked for 11 years, where Anuri had attended every holiday party, shaken every partner's hand, smiled at every assistant. The girl had probably been in that office while Anuri sat at the spouse table at the Christmas dinner last December. She stood in her kitchen for a very long time after he left the room. The plate of food she had made sat on the counter cooling. She had made jollof rice, his favorite, the way her grandmother had taught her. Tomatoes skinned by hand, the oil just right, the smokiness coaxed out slowly. She stared at it for a long time. Then she covered it, put it in the refrigerator, and went to bed. She did not cry until the morning, and then she cried in the shower, with the water running loud. It's because even now, even in this, she did not want to give him the sound of her breaking. The divorce took 7 months. People said she handled it with grace. Anuri smiled when they said it, because grace was just another word for what happened when a woman had too much pride to fall apart in public. She had moved out of the house they had shared for 9 years and into a high-rise apartment downtown with windows that faced east so she could watch the sunrise without having to think about what used to lie beside her when the light came in. She worked longer hours. She ran 4 miles every morning. She called her mother every Sunday and said she was fine, which was almost true by the time the 5th month rolled around. But the only thing she had not managed to close was the professional thread that still connected her to Marcus's world. She was a corporate attorney, and the firm she worked with had recently taken on Mory Group as a client. Mory Group, where Marcus Lawson was a senior architect. Mory Group, whose CEO was a man named Asahi Mory. She had never met him. She had heard of him. Everyone in the city's business world had heard of Asahi Mory, Korean-Japanese, 38 years old, worth more than some small countries. He had taken over Mory Group at 29 after his father's death, doubled the company's revenue in 3 years, and somehow remained almost entirely private. No public relationships, no social media presence. Occasional photographs at charity events where he always looked like he had somewhere more important to be. Anuri had seen exactly one photograph of him in a business journal article her colleague had left on the break room table. Dark hair. A jaw like architecture, eyes that looked at the camera the way some people looked at something they were planning to dismantle. She had thought, trouble, and she had turned the page. The gala was her colleague Patricia's idea. "The Mory Foundation is hosting it," Patricia had said. "Attendance is important. These are our clients now, Anuri. We need a face there." "Send David." "David is in Tokyo. You're going." Now, besides, Patricia had leaned in with the particular energy of someone who had decided something on your behalf and was now disguising it as a favor. You've been inside that apartment for 8 months. You need to be in a room with other humans. So, Anuri had put on the burgundy gown that had been hanging in her closet since before the divorce, done her hair up in the way that showed the length of her neck, and gone to the Aldridge Hotel on a Friday evening in November, feeling like a woman walking back into a world that had briefly stopped belonging to her. She had been there for 40 minutes before she saw him. Asahi Mory was taller than the photographs suggested. He stood near the far side of the room with 2 men who were clearly security, though they wore suits and tried to pretend otherwise. He was in all black, jacket, shirt, no tie, and he was not smiling, which somehow made him the most interesting person in the room. He was listening to a man speak to him with the patient stillness of someone who had heard far more dangerous things than whatever was currently being said. And then he looked across the room, directly at her. Anuri did not look away. She was a lawyer. She had faced harder stares across negotiating tables. She held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds and then deliberately turned to take a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She told herself that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. "Ms. Osi?" His voice was low and precise, not accented exactly but shaped, like someone who had learned English from people who expected perfection. She turned, and he was closer than she expected, which meant he had moved through the room quietly for a large man. "Mr. Mory." She extended her hand. His grip was firm without performance. "I understand you're the attorney handling the Callaway contract review for our firm." "I am." "Then you're the person I should be thanking. The revision you caught in the liability clause saved us a significant dispute." She had, in fact, caught an error that would have cost Mory Group approximately $4 million in potential litigation. She had flagged it in a memo and assumed no one that high up the company would notice, let alone trace it back to her. "Oh, that's what we're paid for," she said. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, more like the decision not to suppress one. "You don't take credit easily," he observed. "I take it when it's due. I just don't take compliments as currency." Now it was closer to a smile. "No, I imagine you don't." They spoke for 11 minutes. She counted afterward, the way you count things that feel significant in ways you're not ready to name. He asked her 3 questions about her career. I listened to every answer without interrupting and told her almost nothing about himself, which told her a great deal. She was used to powerful men filling rooms with themselves. This one collected information like it was a resource and gave nothing back without intention. Before he excused himself, he said, "I'll be reviewing the firm's engagement next quarter. I'd like to speak with you again, Ms. Ose, professionally." "Of course," she said. He nodded once. Then he was gone, absorbed back into the architecture of the event like he had never broken from it at all. Anuri finished her champagne slowly. She did not think about his eyes for the rest of the night. She thought about them on the drive home. She did not know, standing in that ballroom, that 3 weeks later she would receive a phone call that would collapse the careful stability she had rebuilt. She did not know that Marcus, spineless, beloved, unfaithful Marcus, would call her not to apologize but to gloat, in that casual way men sometimes do when they mistake your silence for weakness, telling her that Imani was pregnant and they were getting married, and wasn't it funny how life worked out? She did not know that she would sit in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes afterward, hands on the wheel, the phone face down on the passenger seat, on feeling something move through her that was past grief and past anger and into something quieter and more dangerous. Resolution. She was 35 years old. She had given 9 years to a man who had replaced her with someone who hadn't finished growing up. And she had spent the last 8 months being quietly, gracefully devastated. She was done being quiet about it. She did not know any of that yet. Standing in the ballroom with champagne in her hand and Asahi Mori's gaze still warm on the side of her face. But her life had already begun to change. It had changed the moment he looked at her across a crowded room, and she did not look away. The meeting was scheduled as a contract review. That was what the calendar invitation said. Anuri had prepared accordingly, printed documents, flagged clauses, a fresh yellow legal pad with her questions ordered by priority. She had dressed professionally, charcoal wrap dress, her reading glasses in her bag, hair pulled back. The armor of competence. The costume of a woman who had absolutely no reason to feel anything in a boardroom. Mory Group headquarters occupied the top 4 floors of a building that seemed to have been designed specifically to make people feel like they were already below someone. Black glass exterior, a lobby with marble floors so polished they held your reflection. Security at 3 checkpoints before you reach the elevator. Everything here said, you are entering a different kind of world. She was shown to a conference room on the 38th floor and offered water by an assistant who moved like she had been trained to take up as little space as possible. Anuri set her documents on the table and waited. Asahi Mory arrived exactly on time. He was in charcoal today. Jacket off, sleeves folded twice at the wrist, as if he had already done something requiring effort before this meeting. He sat across from her without preamble, folded his hands on the table, and for a moment said nothing. Anuri waited. She was good at waiting. "The contract review," he said at last, "is not why I called you here." She set down her pen. "Then why?" He looked at her the way he had looked at her at the gala. That measuring quality, that particular stillness, like someone reading a document before signing anything. "I've done considerable research on you over the last 3 weeks, Ms. Osi. Your career, your recent circumstances." The word circumstances landed carefully, not cruelly, but precisely. "You know about my divorce? I know your ex-husband works for me. I know he is a mediocre architect with excellent social skills and poor personal judgment. I know you are a brilliant attorney who has been underutilized since your firm restructured 18 months ago. And I know you are the kind of woman who would rather rebuild alone than accept help, which I respect, and which is also, currently, working against you." Anuri's spine straightened. "This is a strange conversation for a contract meeting." "I told you, this isn't a contract meeting." He paused. "I have a proposal for you." The word dropped into the room like a stone into still water. "I need a wife," Asahi said. "Not romantically, contractually. I need someone I can trust, not someone performing trust because they are afraid of me. To serve in that role for a minimum of 1 year. In exchange, I will clear your firm's outstanding debt with the Mory Group accounts, ensure your career advancement in ways that would otherwise take you another decade, and provide you with resources, protection, and autonomy that most people in this city would spend their lives chasing." She stared at him. "You're serious," she said. "I don't make jokes in boardrooms. You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to enter a contractual arrangement that is formalized as a marriage. Yes. That is the same thing." "No," he said carefully. "It is not. A marriage is built on expectation. What I'm offering is built on terms. Terms you can read, negotiate, and enforce. There is no expectation beyond what is written, no performance beyond what is agreed upon." Anuri looked at him for a long moment. "Why me?" "Because you already know how to hold a room without wanting anything from it. Because you are not impressed by wealth. Well, which means you cannot be bought by someone who wants to use you against me. Because you are sharp enough to navigate the world I move in without requiring constant protection. And because," he met her eyes, "you looked at me across a ballroom full of people who wanted something from me, and the only thing you seemed to want was to get back to your champagne." Something tight in her chest loosened, just slightly. Against her will, she almost smiled. "What world is it?" she said slowly. "Oh, that you move in, Mr. Mory?" Another pause. This one longer. Waited. "A dangerous one," he said. "I won't lie to you about that. There are people who want things from me that I will not give them. Having a wife, a specific kind of wife, complicates their ability to pressure me through personal channels." "You're talking about organized crime." He did not blink. "I'm talking about power. What it looks like in the world, you know, and what it looks like in the world behind it." It was not a denial. Anuri sat with that for a moment. She thought about Marcus calling her from wherever he was, already filling the house that used to be hers with someone 20 years younger. She thought about walking into her apartment that evening to the hum of the refrigerator and the particular quality of silence that had no warmth in it. She thought about the 8 months she had spent becoming smaller so that her grief would take up less space. "I have conditions," she said. Asahi's expression did not change, but something in his posture shifted. The smallest relaxation, as if he had been holding something he could now set down. "Name them." "My career is mine. You don't touch my cases, my clients, or my professional decisions. You open doors where I want doors opened. You don't walk through them for me? Agreed. My physical autonomy is non-negotiable. Whatever this arrangement is, it does not include anything I do not consent to explicitly and in writing. No exceptions. That was already in my draft contract. Next. If I ever feel my life is at risk because of your business, not inconvenienced, not complicated, but genuinely at risk, I have a protected exit. Full immunity, financial security, new identity if necessary. He studied her. Now you've thought about this very quickly for someone who claims to be surprised. I'm a lawyer, Mr. Mory. I think in terms of risk every day. What I'm telling you is that I'm willing to take this one, with those protections in place. Agreed, he said again. All three. Then we have something to discuss. He reached into the folder in front of him and produced a document. 17 pages. She noticed the tabs already placed at the signature lines. He had been confident she would say yes. She should have been annoyed by that. She noted, with some curiosity, that she was not. They were married 6 weeks later. It was small, quiet, and legal. A courthouse ceremony with 2 witnesses who were clearly Asahi's security in nice suits. Anuri wore a cream dress she had found in a boutique downtown, fitted and dignified, with a neckline that said she was not pretending this was a love story. Asahi wore dark gray. He looked, as always, like a man who had arrived at this moment fully prepared while everyone else was still finding their footing. He placed the ring on her finger with steady hands. It was a sapphire, not the traditional diamond. She looked at it afterward and realized he had paid attention. She had mentioned at the gala, almost in passing, that she found clear stones cold. She didn't remember saying it. He had remembered anyway. Ready? He asked when the paperwork was signed. Nakshi looked at the ring on her hand. At this man she had known for 6 weeks, who was now her husband on paper, and possibly something more complicated in ways she wasn't willing to examine yet. I've been ready for longer than you know, she said. His driver opened the car door. As she stepped in, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection in the window. And the woman looking back at her was not the woman who had stood in her kitchen covering a plate of jollof rice at 9 o'clock on a Thursday. She looked, for the first time in a long time, like someone standing at the beginning of something. She just didn't yet know if that something was going to save her or swallow her whole. Marcus found out on a Tuesday, from a colleague who had seen the courthouse records. He called her twice. She did not answer. On the 3rd call, she picked up. You married Asahi Mory? His voice was pitched somewhere between disbelief and something she recognized, with quiet satisfaction as fear. I did. Nuri, that man is not who you think he is. He's dangerous. He's Marcus, she said gently. You called me to tell me you were having a baby with someone half your age. You don't get to call me now with concerns about my choices. A silence. I'm not the one who needs protecting, she added. Not anymore. She hung up. She looked out the window of the car that came for her every morning now, black, armored, silent, at the city moving past in the early light. Somewhere behind her, a life had ended. Somewhere ahead, something she had no name for yet was just beginning to move. The Mory estate was not what Anuri had imagined. She had expected cold, glass and steel, and the architectural aggression of a man who had turned wealth into a wall. What she found instead was a house that sat on 6 acres of landscaped grounds north of the city. Stone and dark wood, high-ceilinged, old in the way of things built to last rather than to impress. There were books everywhere, on built-in shelves, stacked on side tables, open on chairs as if they'd been set down mid-sentence. There was a garden that had clearly been tended by someone who cared, with winter roses still clinging to their canes. There was a kitchen large enough to cook properly in. There were also, she noted, 4 security personnel visible from the entrance hall, cameras at every corner of the exterior, and a man she would come to know as Ryu, who stood 6'3" and watched doorways the way people watched horizons in bad weather. Asahi showed her to her rooms himself. 2nd floor, east wing. A bedroom suite with its own sitting area, a bathroom with a deep stone tub she did not hate, and windows that, she realized slowly, faced east. You pay attention, she said. I make it my business too. He left her to settle in. She stood in the middle of the room for a moment, listening to the quiet, and realized that this particular quiet, unlike her apartment's quiet, had texture to it. The house was not empty, it breathed. The first 3 weeks were careful. They moved around each other with the precise consideration of 2 people who had agreed to share space without making it complicated. breakfast at the same table most mornings. He drank black coffee and read the financial news on a paper he still had physically delivered. She drank tea and worked from her laptop. They spoke about logistics, about appearances, 2 charity events they would attend together, 1 dinner with associates that required them to present as a couple with some warmth. At the dinner, they were excellent. She could feel it working in real time. The way she leaned slightly toward him when she laughed, the way he touched the small of her back when he introduced her, the way his hand was warm and unhurried as he held hers across the table when he made a point. She had expected performance. What caught her off guard was how effortless it felt, like they had practiced. On the drive home, she said, "You're good at that." "At what?" "Making people believe something." He was quiet for a moment. "So are you." Then, "Was any of it not performance?" She looked out the window. "Some of it," she admitted. He didn't ask which parts. She didn't clarify. The city moved past in streams of light. The danger arrived in the 5th week. She came home from a meeting late on a Wednesday. Her own client, her own work, nothing to do with his world, and found the house on a different frequency. Security personnel were not stationed where they usually stood. There were 2 cars she didn't recognize in the drive. Ryu met her at the door with that particular expression of controlled urgency she was learning to read. "Mrs. Mory, the residence is in a secure protocol. If you'll please go directly to your rooms." "What's happening?" "Mr. Mory is handling a situation. You are safe. Please." "Where is he?" Ryu was not a man who looked uncertain. He looked uncertain now. That told her everything. She walked past him. She found Asahi in the library. There were 3 men she had never seen before, all standing, all wearing the sort of calm that professional violence produces. There was blood on Asahi's sleeve, high up near the shoulder. Not much. But there. Every head in the room turned. Asahi's expression did something she hadn't seen it do before. It broke, just for a fraction of a second, into something that looked almost like relief. And then the mask reassembled. "I told Ryu to take you to your rooms," he said. "I heard." She looked at the men, then back at him. "Are you hurt?" "It's minor." "That's not what I asked." The 3 men were watching this exchange with varying degrees of fascination. Asahi said something in rapid Korean that she didn't follow, and they moved, with impressive speed, out of the room. When they were alone, he said, "You should not have come in here." "Probably not." She crossed the room. "Let me see. Anure. Asahi." She said his given name. She had not done that before, she realized. Always Mr. Mory in conversation. It felt different in her mouth. Weighted. Familiar. "Let me see." He let her. She rolled up his sleeve. The cut was 3 inches across his upper arm, shallow but real, the kind made by a blade moved in haste. She went to the cabinet by the window that she had noticed, when she first moved in, contained a first aid kit comprehensive enough to be suspicious. She brought it back and cleaned the wound in silence while he sat on the edge of the reading table and watched her face. "You're not afraid," he said. "I am," she said. "I'm just also practical." "Of what?" She pressed the closure strips to his arm and kept her eyes on her work. "That you're hurt. That something's happening that I don't understand. That I walked into a world with a contract and a sapphire ring and thought I'd accounted for everything, and I obviously haven't." He was quiet. She finished and pressed her hand briefly, just briefly, against the bandaged arm, as if to seal it. "Tell me," she said, "not everything, but enough." And he did. He told her about the Takeda family. Old alliance, old debt, old resentments. He told her that his father's death had not been the accident it was ruled as. He told her that the empire he ran, and he used that word empire, without apology or disguise, was one that others had spent years trying to fracture, one and that the most recent attempt had arrived tonight in the form of a message he would not allow to go unanswered. He did not tell her everything. She had not expected him to. But he told her enough that when she lay in bed that night, she understood what she was living inside. Not a contract, not a transaction, a war that had been going on before she arrived and would continue on terms she had not fully agreed to. She thought she should be frightened. She was, a little. But beneath the fear was something else. Something that had been growing quietly in the east-facing room with the winter light, in the kitchen where she had started cooking again, in the car rides through the city where she watched him read the world through windows like it was a problem he could solve if he looked long enough. She was not ready to name it. 3 days later, she was in the garden with coffee when he came and sat beside her on the stone bench without announcing himself. That was something she had noticed about Asahi. He did not announce himself anywhere. He arrived and you adjusted. The winter roses were catching the early light. Her coffee was warm in both hands. He was in a dark shirt, no jacket, which meant he had come straight from inside without planning to be outside long. She did not say anything. Neither did he. This was something they had developed without discussing it, the capacity to be in the same space without filling it. After a while, he said, "The situation has been resolved." "Are you sure?" "For now." "That doesn't reassure me." "No, I suppose it doesn't." He looked at the roses. "I want to ask you something." "Ask." "When you agreed to this, the contract, the arrangement, what did you think it would become?" She considered being evasive. She was good at evasion. She chose honesty instead, the way you choose something that might cost you. "I thought it would be useful," she said. "A way to rebuild. A wall between me and feeling sorry for myself." "And now?" She looked at him. In the morning light, he looked less like a weapon and more like a person. Tired, perhaps, in ways that didn't show until the armor came down. She thought about the moment in the library when his face had moved, just for a second, at the sight of her. "Now, I think I may have miscalculated what I was agreeing to," she said. He turned to look at her. Something was very present in his eyes. Not hidden, not managed. You just there. "In what way?" She let herself be honest, because there was something about this man that made dishonesty feel like a waste of good time. "I think I agreed to walls and ended up in a home. I think I agreed to a role and ended up in a relationship with more weight than I was prepared for. And I think..." She paused, steadied herself. "I think I've stopped looking for the exit clause." The garden held them in its winter quiet. He reached over, slowly. Austin placed his hand over hers on the bench. Not pulling, not claiming. Just there. The way you put something down in a place you intend to stay. "I built this house to be a fortress," he said. "I did not expect someone to come inside it and make it feel like something else." "What does it feel like?" she asked. He looked at her for a long time. When Asahi Mory looked at you, it was not the glance of a man who was flattering you. It was the look of someone reading something they wanted to understand completely. "Like it matters," he said. "What happens here?" Anuri looked at the roses, at the light coming through them, pale and clean and persistent, at the ring on her hand, blue, not clear, chosen because he had remembered a passing comment she could barely recall making, and felt something settle in her chest that had been in motion for a very long time. She thought, sometimes, about the woman who had stood in a kitchen on a Thursday night, covering a plate of food while her marriage ended quietly across the room. She thought about what that woman had believed, that love was something you maintained by working hard at it, that loyalty would be returned in kind, that the life she had built was stable because she had built it carefully. She did not hate that woman. She understood her. But she was not her anymore. She was a woman who had walked into a burning world with a signed contract and found somewhere inside the smoke and the danger and the careful kept silence of a man who did not give himself easily that she was not afraid to stay. Marcus had left her for a girl who had not yet had to become anyone. She had become, in the fire that followed, someone she did not yet fully recognize, but recognized, for the first time in a long time, as herself. And Asahi Mory, more ruthless and careful and quietly watching her across every room he entered, Asahi Mory had looked. And he had not looked away.